Hi, my name's Mail. My father told me to leave, right in the middle of Christmas dinner. No warning, no fight. Just a quiet eviction over turkey and wine. Then they sold the house I paid for, and rewrote the story so I'd sound like the villain who stormed off. But what if I told you they planned it before I even sat down at the table? What if I told you this wasn't about a holiday? It was about being erased, slowly, politely, and completely. Would you stay to hear how far a family will go to silence the one person who kept them afloat? I always thought Christmas was supposed to soften things. The lights, the cinnamon in the air, the songs no one really liked but everyone pretended to love. It was supposed to make people act better, kinder. I don't know why I still hoped for that after all these years. That morning, I woke up before the sun rose. I peeled sweet potatoes, roasted a full turkey, made the cornbread stuffing from scratch like Mama used to. I even pulled out the old glass pie dish she left behind. The house smelled like something worth staying for, even if the people inside didn't feel the same. Geneva didn't help. She never did. She showed up around 4 p.m. with wine in hand and a condescending, "You actually did all this yourself?" Like it was a compliment. Dad barely looked up when I brought out the dishes. He sat at the head of the table like a tired king, surveying a kingdom he stopped maintaining long ago. Still, I tried. I poured his drink. I set out the good silver. I even put on the soft jazz playlist he liked. Not carols, just music. Maybe, just maybe, I thought this year would be different. Maybe he'd say thank you. Instead, halfway through his turkey, he set his fork down, wiped his mouth, and without even glancing up, he said it. "You need to move out, Mail." Just like that. Like he was commenting on the weather. Geneva kept eating. Her wine glass tapped the table like background noise in a movie. I froze. I actually thought I misheard him. But he didn't flinch. He didn't pause. He just picked up another bite like nothing had happened. "Sorry?" I asked, keeping my voice even. Darvin didn't raise his voice. He just sighed like he was doing me a favor. "It's time. You're grown. We need our space back." "I've been covering the mortgage," I said. "I paid for the roof repairs, the plumbing, even your phone bill last month." He looked at me like I was bringing up something vulgar. "It's not about the money. Don't make this ugly." Ugly! Geneva finally looked at me. Her lips curved into the kind of smirk you give someone who finally did what you always expected. I wanted to scream, or cry, or throw something. But instead, I got up. I didn't even finish my plate. I walked down the hallway that I helped repaint 2 summers ago. Past the door I fixed when it squeaked for weeks, and no one bothered to care. Inside my room, the air was colder, probably because I'd turned the heat off in the mornings to save them money. I reached for my duffel bag, already folded from a trip I canceled to help Geneva with a fundraiser 3 months back. Funny. They never asked me to stay. Just expected I wouldn't leave. I folded my sweaters one by one, took my toiletries, left the things that didn't matter. And when I saw the hand-drawn Christmas card from my niece, crookedly taped to the mirror, I paused. It said, in glitter marker, "Aunt Mail, you're the best part of our home." I didn't take it. I left it exactly where it was. Because that wasn't my home anymore. That night, something in me broke. Not loudly, not all at once. It just cracked quietly, like the sound of ice shifting under your feet. I zipped my coat, slung the duffel over my shoulder. No one knocked. No one asked where I was going. As I passed the dining room again, Darvin didn't look up, but his voice followed me, casual as ever. "Take the pie if you want." He said it like he was offering a napkin. I didn't answer. I didn't take the pie. I took my silence, and I left. I didn't look back. The porch light was off. The driveway was quiet. No one leaned out the door to stop me, not even to pretend. The night was dry and sharp, the kind of cold that pinched the skin without warning. A neighbor's dog barked once in the distance, then went quiet, like even it knew this wasn't the kind of night for noise. I walked down the sidewalk clutching the same duffel I had carried on vacations I'd canceled for them. Every step I took felt heavier than the one before, like the weight of that house had finally left my shoulders and was now dragging at my feet. But I didn't stop. I didn't let myself. It took 15 minutes to reach Helena's duplex. Her porch light was on. Her place was small but warm. She opened the door before I could knock. Maybe she saw me through the blinds. Maybe she just knew. She didn't ask what happened. Didn't make a face like she was surprised. "Guest room's a mess. Couch is yours," she said, handing me a blanket and a pair of clean socks. "Shower's hot if you want it. Food's in the fridge. I'll be up early, but take whatever you need." That was it. No dramatics. No pity. Just quiet acceptance. I dropped my bag by the side of the couch and sat down, letting the fabric of the worn cushions swallow me. Her Christmas tree was still lit in the corner, ornaments made by her nephews hanging off the branches, some crooked, some barely hanging on. There was a soft scent of pine and cinnamon from a candle half burned on the coffee table. Her home didn't smell like power or pride. It smelled like kindness. I didn't cry. I didn't unpack. I just turned off my phone and pulled the blanket over my knees. Sometimes silence is the only thing you can control. When I turned the phone back on the next morning, there were 14 messages. Not one from Dad. Not one from Geneva. But cousins I hadn't seen in months, uncles who couldn't even remember my birthday, all suddenly had something to say. "I heard you screamed at your dad at the table." "Storming out during dinner on Christmas?" One even wrote, "It's always the quiet ones who snap, huh?" My stomach twisted. My fingers hovered over the screen, reading the words again and again. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't slammed anything. I hadn't even raised my voice. I called Aunt Marcia, the only one who ever called me first. She picked up after one ring. "Sweetheart, what happened?" she asked. "You tell me," I said. "You're hearing the story." She hesitated. "They said you threw your napkin, yelled something about being ungrateful, and left." "I didn't finish my dinner," I said quietly. "Didn't even say a word. He told me to leave, and I left." A pause. Then, "Well, that's not the version I got." I didn't argue. What would be the point? People believe what makes them comfortable, and no one's more comforting than a villain you helped create. That night, lying on Helena's couch, I stared up at the ceiling. The overhead fan made slow, lopsided circles. I replayed the dinner over and over in my mind, searching for something I might have done wrong. Did I look angry when I stood? Did my silence feel like rebellion? Did I raise my eyebrow too high or reach for the serving spoon too sharply? But I knew the truth. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even ask, why? And somehow, that still made me the problem. They rewrote the scene before I even closed the door. The hardest part of leaving isn't walking out. It's realizing how quickly people rearrange the furniture so it looks like you were never there. The next day didn't feel like a new day. It just felt like the back half of the same night. I woke up to a faint knock on the doorframe. Helena, already dressed for work, her car keys jangling in one hand, a mug of coffee in the other. "I left you the last blueberry muffin," she said, "and don't forget to actually eat it this time." I managed a nod and a half smile. She didn't linger. She just left the door cracked, like a small sign that I wasn't entirely shut out of something. Once I heard her car pull out, I slid out of bed and reached for my phone. Not because I was expecting anyone to care, but because habit makes fools of us all. No missed calls, no new texts. I opened Instagram. Geneva had posted a photo, one of those perfectly lit dining room shots, the kind you only get by moving the good chairs around and turning off the overhead lights. Everyone was there. Darvin, Geneva, Lainey, a few cousins. My seat, second from the end, was cropped just outside the frame. The caption read, "Christmas blessings, grateful for those who show up for family." I didn't feel hurt. I felt hollow. Like someone had stolen a shirt I hadn't worn in years, then posted a picture of themselves in it, pretending it had always been theirs. I clicked out of the app, opened our family group chat to see what else had been said. It wasn't there. Not that it was empty. Gone. No, you left the group notification. No chat archived banner. Just vanished. I texted Aunt Marcia. Did the Hale family chat get deleted? She wrote back almost immediately. Nope, still there. Geneva said you asked to be taken off. Thought you needed space. I stared at the screen. I hadn't said a word. I hadn't touched that group. They removed me, then made it look like I chose to disappear. I whispered to myself, I never said that, and put the phone down. I didn't text back. I didn't start a new group. I just sat there on the couch, blanket still around my shoulders, looking out Helena's living room window at the tree across the street. It was bare, branches tangled and empty, but still stood straighter than I had in days. Funny how you think the hardest part of a fall is the impact, but sometimes it's the silence after, when no one checks to see if you landed at all. I thought back to other moments. The time Geneva hosted a dinner and said she must have accidentally forgotten to loop me in. The time Dad introduced me at the neighborhood cookout not as his daughter, but as the extra set of hands around the house. The way I had laughed nervously like it didn't sting. But those weren't oversights, they were patterns. Tiny edits in the story until the entire narrative belonged to someone else. The worst kind of erasure doesn't feel like a slap. It's polite, it's quiet. It sounds like, we just assumed you were busy. It feels like, we thought you'd prefer not to come. And after enough of those, you start questioning whether you were ever actually invited at all. Later that evening, Helena came home with 2 peppermint teas from the gas station. She handed me one and didn't say anything right away. She just sat beside me, her eyes flicking toward my phone, lying screen down on the coffee table. "You're not losing it," she finally said. I looked at her. "You're just finally seeing it for what it is." I let out a short breath that was halfway between a laugh and something heavier. "I think I'm done asking to stay in places where I was never really wanted in the first place." Helena nodded. "Good. Took you long enough?" She meant it without malice, and that made it land softer. We sipped our tea in silence after that. No music, no TV, just the sound of someone else choosing to stay beside me without needing a reason. The next morning, I sat at Helena's kitchen table, staring at my laptop screen like it owed me answers. She had already gone to work, leaving me a post-it on the fridge that just said, "Breathe and eat." A muffin sat untouched next to my coffee. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't tired either. I was just still, like my whole body was waiting for permission to exist again. I opened my online banking account, mostly out of habit. There were no surprises. My balance hadn't changed overnight. But then a familiar alert popped up from the mortgage dashboard. Loan activity update, address verification required. At first, I thought it was a glitch. I hadn't logged into that page in months, but curiosity pulled me in. There it was, my name, still listed on the mortgage of the house I was just told to leave. Primary borrower, not cosigner, not helpful daughter. Primary. My stomach twisted, not from anger, but from a kind of clarity that hurt more than the betrayal itself. I clicked through the breakdown. Darvin had missed 2 payments earlier in the year. I had covered both. I had the receipts to prove it. The house I was told I no longer belonged to was still tied to my name like a chain I forgot was locked around my ankle. "I didn't just live there," I muttered. "I kept it alive." I stared at the numbers, the statements, the dates. Every transfer, every payment, it all pointed back to me. Back to every time I told myself, "They're family. This is what family does." And yet, here I was, in someone else's guest room, being erased from the story while still carrying the debt. I started digging through old emails, not out of spite, just to confirm I hadn't imagined it all. I typed utilities into the search bar. That's when I found it. A text from Mom, dated 2 Christmases ago, right after I'd sent $600 for emergency plumbing. "Thank you, Maija. I didn't know what we were going to do if you hadn't sent that money for the pipes." Her words were simple, but they stopped me cold. I hadn't opened that thread since her funeral. Back then, I couldn't bear to see her name pop up. It felt like staring at a locked door I couldn't walk through anymore. But now, reading her message again, I felt something settle in me. She had known. She had seen me. Maybe not loudly, maybe not in front of everyone, but enough to say thank you. Funny how gratitude gets buried faster than grief. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. The silence in the kitchen was different from the one at home. Here, it didn't feel like punishment. It felt like space, like room to breathe. My thoughts spiraled back to all the ways my effort had been minimized. Geneva always said things like, "Mail's just helping out. She likes feeling useful." And Dad, Darvin, he referred to it as temporary support anytime someone asked who paid for what. Temporary? I'd been paying into that house for nearly 3 years. If this were a marriage, I'd have rights. But this was blood. And in families, loyalty is the currency, not receipts. I wasn't angry, not the kind of angry that wanted revenge. I was angry in that slow, steady way that makes you start filing things, documenting, creating folders. I opened a blank one on my desktop, named it, for later. Inside it, I dropped the mortgage documents, the utility payment receipts, the bank statements labeled Mom, House Repairs, the text from her, screenshots of my name on the loan. This wasn't about revenge. It was about memory. Because if they were going to turn me into the villain, I would at least be a well-documented one. And if this story was going to be told without me, I'd still have the evidence that I had been there. That folder I named For Later, it didn't get to rest long. I was scrolling on my phone during lunch, looking for a rental listing Helena had sent me. Just a 2-bedroom in the West End. Nothing fancy, but far enough from everything I was trying to forget. As I tapped through my Zillow alerts, one new listing caught my eye. Not because of the photos, but because of the porch. That porch. The sagging step I patched with plywood. The mailbox I replaced after the old one rusted off the hinge. The wind chime Mom hung that no one ever took down. It was my family's house. My house. The listing said, charming 4-bedroom cabin with recent upgrades, new kitchen, updated plumbing. My stomach tightened. I clicked through the pictures, my paint colors, my backsplash tile, the kitchen faucet I argued with the plumber about because he tried to charge us for work he didn't do. And below all of it, listing agent, Geneva Rausch. She didn't even try to hide it. She didn't even think to fake a different name, I whispered. I didn't call her, I didn't text. Instead, I dialed the number on the listing and pretended to be a potential buyer. The receptionist was polite, chatty. She told me Geneva was handling the sale personally and would love to set up a tour. I asked if there were any co-owners. Nope, she said. Single owner property, great bones, family legacy. Family legacy. I thanked her and hung up. The silence in the room felt like concrete. They're selling it like I was never there, I muttered. Like I didn't sign the loan, cover the bills, keep the lights on. Like I didn't patch every hole in that damn place. I pulled up the file I had saved earlier. Mortgage records, payment confirmations, all tied to me. This wasn't just being pushed out. This was erasure, with a price tag. That night, Helena got home later than usual. She was digging through her tote bag when she looked up and asked, "Did your dad ever come back after Christmas?" "No," I said. "But he came to the house, the night I left." She paused, reached for her phone. "Let me check something." Turns out, the smart doorbell camera at her front door had saved a video from 2 nights earlier, the night Darvin had knocked on her door with a pie box and a flat smile. She cast it to the TV. There he was, standing in the porch light, holding a store-bought pecan pie. He took a deep breath and pulled out his phone. "She'll fall for it," he said into the speaker. "She always wants to believe the best in people." Then he put the phone away and knocked. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, watching him knock, waiting for the version of the scene that matched the man who raised me. It never came. He was never coming to make peace, Helena said. He was rehearsing a scene. I nodded. He didn't want reconciliation. He wanted to manage the story. The next morning, I opened the For Later folder and renamed it Truth File Z01. I added screenshots of the Zillow listing, audio from my buyer call with the real estate assistant, the video from Helena's camera. Each piece of evidence felt like a sentence in a book they'd been trying to burn, and I was done letting them light the match. Because if Geneva and Darvin wanted to sell a fantasy, someone needed to keep the receipts. The day moved slowly after I updated the truth file. I folded the laptop shut, thinking I might actually feel some sense of progress. But peace doesn't come that easily, not when you've lived this long pretending things were fine. It was almost dusk when Helena called out from the kitchen, her voice flat, like she already knew I wouldn't want to hear it. "There's a man at the door, says he's your dad." I didn't stand up right away, just stared at the floorboards for a second longer, as if they'd offer better advice than my own gut. When I finally opened the front door, just a crack, I saw him. Darvin, holding a pie box from the grocery store bakery and a smile that didn't touch his eyes. He spoke first. "Thought we could talk. Maybe get back on the same page." I stepped outside and pulled the door closed behind me. "Which version of the story are we going with today?" I asked. He chuckled, like I'd made a joke. "It's not about blame, Mail. It's about family." That word, family, always used like a rope to tie you down. "You're not coming here for me," I said. "You're coming for Geneva's deal." His face didn't move much, but something behind his eyes flickered. He shifted on his feet. "You know your sister's trying to wrap up the house sale soon. It's a good offer, this drama online. It's complicating things." I crossed my arms. "So you came to patch things up? Or manage fallout?" His silence was louder than any confession. "I hope you know," I added, "I'm documenting everything." Darvin's jaw tensed. "That's not what family does." "Then maybe we're not the kind of family you think we are." I turned back toward the door, pausing only to say, "You can take your pie with you." That night, the house was quiet again. Helena was grading papers in the other room, and I was scrolling through my email when I saw a missed video call from Ricky, my cousin on my mom's side. I hadn't spoken to him in months. I called him back. He answered on the second ring, his face too close to the camera, his voice low like he didn't want someone nearby to hear. "Hey, I don't know if I should even be telling you this," he started, "but the family met before Christmas." My stomach tightened. He continued, "Geneva pushed for it, said things were getting too crowded at the house, said it was time you got your own place. Dad backed it." "So they planned to ask me to leave?" I asked. "Yeah," Ricky said, not meeting the camera. "They just didn't want to bring it up until dinner. Thought it would be easier that way, like less of a confrontation. Because ambushing me between courses is so respectful," I said, too tired to fake a tone. He looked genuinely guilty. "I didn't vote, Mail. I didn't think it would happen like that. I thought it would stay hypothetical." "That's the problem," I replied. "None of you thought I'd actually leave. You thought I'd swallow it like every other time." Silence. Then Ricky said, "I'm sorry." I didn't say it back. I didn't need to. "Thank you for telling me," I said instead. "And don't worry, I won't mention your name." After the call, I opened the truth file again. Started a new folder labeled Premeditated Eviction. Then I opened my journal and wrote one line. "Let them be a family without me, if being family means erasing me." I closed the journal and finally turned off the lamp. There was nothing left to think about that night. Darvin hadn't come to apologize. He came to contain the story. But I wasn't playing PR for people who had already decided I was disposable. I slept deeper than I expected that night, but I woke up with the familiar tension, already sitting in my chest, like it had been waiting for me. It wasn't even light outside yet, just that gray in-between hour where nothing feels quite real. By the time sunlight pushed its way through Helena's blinds, I'd already made coffee and sat with it long enough for it to go cold. I was scrolling through headlines and half-reading emails when a message popped up from a number I hadn't saved, but knew instantly. It was my mother. No greeting, no warmth. Mail, I heard what you've been posting. I'm begging you, not for me, but for this family. Don't air our pain like laundry. Then another one followed. It's already hard enough. You're making it harder. Please stop embarrassing us. I didn't blink. I just reread it twice, then a third time. There was no, are you okay? No, where are you staying? No, do you need anything? Just image, always image. I could almost hear her voice behind the words, soft but clipped, the same way she used to speak when guests overstayed, and she didn't want to be rude. Even after being cut out, what mattered most wasn't me. It was how they looked with me gone. I sat for a long time before typing a reply. At first, it was paragraphs. I laid it all out. Dates, numbers, names, screenshots. Everything I could have said if I thought it would make a difference. Then I erased it all and typed one sentence. I'm safe. Thank you for asking. I hit send. That silence afterward said everything. I got up and stretched, trying to shake the weight off my shoulders like it was physical. Helena came into the kitchen a few minutes later, fresh from her shower, her hair still damp and wrapped in a towel. She glanced at the expression on my face and said, You got something, didn't you? I nodded, handing her the phone. She read the messages slowly, then raised one eyebrow. That's not concern, that's image control. They're not asking me to come home, I said. They're asking me to shut up. Helena poured herself some coffee and leaned against the counter. My mother used to say, if they only call you when they're embarrassed, they weren't proud of you to begin with. I smiled, but there was no humor in it. I wasn't raised to speak up, I told her. I was raised to smooth things over, to make room, to apologize first, even if I didn't start it. But now that I'm not folding myself into their story, suddenly I'm the threat. Helena nodded. You broke the rhythm. They don't know how to dance without you. I opened my laptop and pulled up the truth file again. I created a new folder inside and titled it, Control Attempts, Emotional Guilt. I dragged in a screenshot of my mother's message. Then I closed it. I didn't post anything online. No dramatic statements. No public outrage. Instead, I opened my journal and wrote a single line. They get loud when I speak, but never when I vanish. That told me everything I needed to know. I don't think I hated her for it. That would have been easier. It was worse than hate. It was disappointment in someone I'd once built my self-worth around. I looked out the window. The street was quiet, lined with trash bins waiting for pickup and cars frosted from the night before. I used to love mornings like this, the hush, the chance to start over. But now I knew better. You're not supposed to start over. You're supposed to pretend you never wanted anything different to begin with. I hadn't planned to speak up that day, but plans didn't matter much anymore, not after being shoved out of every space I'd helped hold together. By noon, I'd gone through the motions, made coffee, scrolled aimlessly, ignored 3 calls from extended relatives whose names I barely saved. I sat at the little table by Helena's window, with the same kind of resolve you use when pulling out a splinter. You know it'll sting, but it's better than pretending it's not still under your skin. I opened my laptop, and instead of checking bills or filing more documents into my truth file, I opened a blank post. Facebook, not anonymous, not buried in a Reddit thread. My real name, my face, my truth. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wasn't fueled by anger, not anymore. This was something deeper, sharper. If they're going to tell the story without me, I thought, I'll give them the whole script. And so I wrote. I've been quiet for days, not because I had something to hide, but because I wasn't sure anyone would care what I had to say. But silence, I've learned, is how people rewrite you. Then I laid it out, plain and clean. I said I'd been living at my parents' house, yes, but not for free. I co-signed the mortgage when my dad's credit couldn't qualify. I paid the bills. I paid for the kitchen renovation, the new water heater, even the Wi-Fi my father used to watch the news, and my sister used to post family brunches I was never invited to. I clarified that I never raised my voice at Christmas dinner. I never stormed out. I was told to leave, and I did. I attached screenshots, my name on the mortgage, a bank transfer labeled Mom Ba Plumbing, a text from her thanking me for covering the emergency bill that Christmas. I included a screenshot of the Zillow listing, my childhood home for sale without my knowledge, listed by my sister. I even included a still from the doorbell video of my dad's rehearsed reconciliation, captioned with his own voice saying, "She'll fall for it." My closing line wasn't dramatic. It was a statement of fact. I didn't leave on Christmas. I was erased. This is just me taking my name back. And I hit post. Then I closed the laptop and walked to the kitchen to make tea. Nothing special, just chamomile in a chipped mug. But it was mine. I didn't check my phone for a while, but when I did, it was already buzzing nonstop. Aunt Marcia had commented, "I wish I had asked sooner. I'm sorry, Mail." Cousin Caleb wrote, "We always knew something felt off. You didn't deserve that." Others said nothing, but I saw my follower count shift. People were reading, people were sharing, and for once, no one was speaking over me. Geneva didn't message, Darwin didn't call, and that silence? It wasn't mine to carry this time. It belonged to them. Helena came home around 6. She dropped her keys on the counter, glanced at me, and asked, "You okay?" I nodded. "Posted it." She didn't ask what. She just poured 2 glasses of sparkling water and handed me one like it was a toast. "I hope it burns a little," she said. I smiled. "I hope it makes them stop pretending I was never there." Before bed, I printed the full post and saved it as a PDF. I added it to the truth file under a folder labeled Public Record. Then I lit a candle my mom gave me years ago, one of those gift shop kinds with words printed on the glass. It said, "Rooted." I watched the flame flicker, steady and small, and for once, I wasn't the one being quiet. I didn't sleep much the night after I posted, not because I was anxious, but because my body had grown unfamiliar with what it meant to be heard. By morning, my phone was lighting up like a Christmas tree. Comments, shares, messages, some from people I hadn't spoken to in years, some from names I didn't even recognize. I scrolled slowly, taking it in like someone reading a report of their own disappearance and finding proof they'd always existed. One comment stopped me. "Aunt Marcia, we failed you. We believed the wrong version, and I'm sorry it took a public post for me to see it." I didn't respond. I just stared at her words until they blurred a little. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. And sometimes that's enough. By evening, I got a private message from her. "I was asked to step away from the family New Year's call tonight," she wrote. "Geneva says I'm encouraging division." I typed, "They'd rather lose one more person than admit one of us told the truth," but deleted it. Instead, I sent a heart. Not out of affection, but as a quiet nod. I saw her. She saw me. That was enough. Around 7:30, I got a DM from someone I hadn't heard from since college. Ashley, one of the few people who had seen me during the worst of my mom's final year. "Hey, is this you?" she asked, attaching a screenshot from a nonprofit's community announcement. It was a promotional post for a housing equity campaign led by Geneva. The caption read, "Geneva Rausch, who helped her struggling sister rebuild after hardship, channels that empathy into her work with underserved families." I read the sentence again, then again. Struggling sister, rebuild after hardship. I laughed, but it had no joy in it. Geneva had taken my life, reshaped it, and slid herself into the role of savior. I was now a cautionary tale being used to sell grants. I called the nonprofit pretending to be a reporter, said I was fact-checking before publishing a feature. The woman on the other end was polite, even helpful. "Yes, the story comes directly from her," she said. She provided a short bio and timeline, very inspiring. They even used an old photo of her childhood home in the application materials. My childhood home. I asked for a copy of the submitted materials for transparency. She sent it without hesitation. Geneva hadn't just rewritten the narrative. She'd built a resume out of it. The PDF included a fake summary of events, how she had taken in her unemployed, emotionally fragile sister, and helped her rebuild her life after a breakdown. It even referenced Christmas as a turning point in their bond. I stared at it. I was erased from the dinner table, I muttered, and then rewritten on grant paper. Helena was in the kitchen, chopping celery for a soup neither of us felt like eating. I showed her the file. "You going to expose her?" she asked. "Not yet." She looked at me, surprised. I leaned back in the chair and said, "People like Geneva? They dig their own holes. I'm just making sure someone's holding the flashlight when they trip." I created a new section in the truth file, public narrative misuse, identity manipulation. I added the screenshots, the application, and the PDF. Then I started building a timeline, emails, photos, messages, lining up the real version of my life beside the counterfeit one my sister had sold as branding. I set a calendar alert for 2 weeks later, send to press if necessary. The rest could wait. That night, fireworks started early. The neighbors across the street had already begun celebrating New Year's Eve like it mattered. Helena poured us glasses of ginger ale. We didn't say much. At midnight, we clinked glasses. "I'm not waiting for them to see me anymore," I said. "I see myself now." She smiled and tapped her glass to mine. As the pops of fireworks echoed outside, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A voicemail dropped in. I didn't check it, not yet. The first morning of the new year felt less like a beginning and more like standing still. I poured coffee, reheated leftover soup from the night before, and ignored the voicemail notification still blinking on my phone. After breakfast, I moved to the couch with my laptop. I wasn't expecting anything new. I opened a few browser tabs, intending to file receipts, when I noticed an old video draft sitting in my files. I almost deleted it. Then I remembered what it was. 8 months ago, I'd recorded a quick clip in the kitchen after the renovations were finished. Nothing scripted. Just me filming Darvin showing the place to a neighbor who'd dropped by unannounced. I had been standing in the hallway, filming silently while he spoke. On screen, Darvin stood in front of the new tile backsplash and granite counters, the ones I paid for. He was gesturing with pride like a man in a home improvement ad. "Mail paid for this whole thing," he said to the neighbor. "She basically saved the place." Geneva stood to the side, watching, saying nothing. I had never posted it because I didn't want to embarrass him. Because even when I was doing everything, I still protected them from accountability. But now they'd stolen my name and rebuilt it in their own image. It was time I showed people what they never saw. I uploaded the video to TikTok. No hashtags, no filter, just truth. Caption: "Since my side of the story keeps getting rewritten, here's the original dialogue." I didn't check the app for a few hours. When I finally did, the numbers made my hands go still. 10,000 views in 2 hours, 47,000 by the afternoon. By dinner time, 120,000. The comments came fast. "That's her house. Why was she pushed out? This is why you keep receipts." So Geneva just lied? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Aunt Marcia reposted it on her own feed. A friend of the family, who ran a local advocacy blog, asked if they could write about it. Geneva shut down her Instagram comments. Darvin texted me one line, "Take it down, you made your point." I stared at the message for 5 full seconds, then replied, "It's not for your point, it's for the record." No response. I closed the conversation and sat in the kitchen with Helena. She was dicing vegetables, pretending not to read my expression too closely. "They wanted to keep it tidy," she said, sliding carrots into the pot. "You just reminded everyone that the truth's usually messy." I nodded. "And stronger." A voice message came through from an old church elder who hadn't spoken to me in years. His voice trembled. "I never knew. We thought you were just quiet. You've always been that way." I listened, let it sit for a moment, and said out loud, "Quiet doesn't mean invisible. Helena set down her knife. "No," she said. "Sometimes quiet just means you were giving them a chance to be decent before you stopped waiting." I opened the truth file again and created a new folder, Public Receipts. I dragged the video in and labeled it with the date and timestamp. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just felt even. Not vindicated, not victorious. Just even. The power wasn't in their court anymore. It wasn't in mine either. It was in plain view now. The next morning, I woke up and didn't reach for my phone first. I stretched. I got dressed. I made a real breakfast. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I had to defend my existence before 9 a.m. By mid-afternoon the next day, the kitchen smelled like lemon cleaner and toast crumbs. Helena was out running errands, and I was alone, laptop open, cursor blinking on a spreadsheet I wasn't really working on. Then came the email. Subject: Verification required. Mortgage activity flagged. At first, I thought it was a phishing scam. I almost deleted it, but the sender was real. My mortgage lender's automated alert system. A transaction was finalized on a property account associated with your social security number. I clicked through the security checks, heart speeding with every screen that loaded. There it was. Title of the house, transferred. Ownership, Darvin Hale, sole owner. I blinked. My name, which had been listed alongside his for years, was gone. I scrolled to the attached documentation, downloaded the PDF. I opened it. Page 2, quitclaim deed, my name printed, a signature next to it. Except, it wasn't mine. I know my own handwriting like I know the inside of that house. I sign with 2 loops in the B. This signature had one loop tilted wrong, notarized. I whispered to myself, they forged it. That moment split something open in me. Not the kind that bleeds, but the kind that turns cold. I wasn't erased by accident. They did it with paperwork. I called the title office, disguised my voice just slightly, and said I was a clerk from a legal firm double-checking a client file. It was a small town. People still trusted phone voices. The woman on the other end said, "Yes, it was processed about 2 weeks ago. Looked good, clean, notarized locally." "Can I ask," I said, "who notarized the document?" She read the name. One I didn't know. I thanked her, ended the call, and immediately ran the notary license through the state's website. Expired? A full year ago. Which meant the notarization wasn't just shady, it was illegal. They weren't just rewriting the story, I murmured. They were laundering the ending. Helena came in through the back door just as I hit print. She saw the look on my face and set the grocery bags down carefully. "What now?" I held up the papers. "They forged my name," I said. "They filed a fraudulent deed transfer." She didn't speak for a beat. Then, "That's not just low, that's criminal." I nodded. "It's not a family dispute anymore, it's fraud." She sat down beside me while I organized everything into piles. Original mortgage agreement, current title printout, screenshot of the fake signature, expired notary verification. It was a small stack, but it felt like stone. I pulled out my phone and found the number for Marisol Vega, a lawyer I'd met 2 years ago at a housing equity conference. I'd helped her pro bono with some zoning materials back then. She'd told me, "If you ever need help, the real kind, call me." I remember people who show up. Now was that time. Her voicemail clicked on. "Hi, this is Mela Barajas," I said calmly, keeping my tone level. "I believe I've been the victim of mortgage fraud by a family member. I have full documentation. Please call me when you're available." I ended the call and stared at the wall for a long time. Not out of fear. Not even sadness. Just stillness. A stillness born from having done everything right and watching people still try to erase me. I added a new folder to the truth file. Forgery, legal documentation. Then, I picked up my journal and wrote a single line. They weren't just willing to lie about me, they were willing to steal from me to keep the lie alive. I set the pen down, exhaled, and pressed the power button on the laptop. If they thought a forged signature would be the period on this story, they forgot who wrote the rest. I woke up the next morning, still dressed from the night before. My laptop sat closed on the coffee table, the printer beside it blinking from the last run of documents. It felt like my living room had turned into a war room overnight, silent, but heavy with intent. My phone buzzed around 9:30 a.m. A new message popped up from my younger sister, Lonnie. I hadn't heard from her directly since all of this started. "Just a heads up, Dad and Geneva want me to stay out of the mess." I stared at the words, rereading the quotes she included. They want, not she wants. Then a second text followed. "They said if I stay quiet, I'll be added to the equity split when the house sells." I sat back, the phone still in my hand. That was it. No, "How are you?" No, "Are you okay?" Just a quick heads up before she took the offer. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just thought, blood doesn't make you immune to bribes. It just makes you first in line. By late afternoon, Helena came in holding a manila envelope. Her brow was furrowed. "This was hand-delivered," she said, setting it down on the table like it might explode. I opened it. Thick paper, legal formatting. A letter from someone claiming to represent the interests of the Hale estate. Language like undue influence, obstruction of reconciliation, and the kicker, potential defamation exposure. I read it twice. "They're accusing me of helping you tell the truth," Helena said flatly, almost impressed. "They're not afraid of me anymore," I replied. "They're afraid I'm not alone." Helena grabbed a pen and, without saying a word, flipped the back of the letter over. She wrote one sentence and stuck it on the fridge with a magnet. "Their fear is proof. Keep going." We didn't talk much after that. She made soup. I scanned the letter into the truth file. That evening, I sat on the couch with my phone, staring at Lonnie's texts. I called her. I didn't want to, but some part of me still hoped she'd say, "I'm with you." She answered on the third ring. "Hey," she said, her voice small. "Did you agree to it?" I asked. "No," she said quickly. Then, quieter. "But I didn't say no either." I let that sit. "You know I love you," she added, "but I still live there." "And I had to pay for that place," I said, my voice flat. "I get it." "I didn't ask for any of this," she whispered. "None of us did," I said. "But you're standing in the middle of it anyway." There was silence between us. Thick. Heavy. Then I said, "Just don't be surprised if silence sounds like permission to them." She didn't reply. I didn't push. After the call, I sat quietly for a few minutes. Then I opened the truth file. New folder. Witness suppression and coercion. I dropped in screenshots of Lonnie's messages and a scan of Helena's letter. Backed it all up to encrypted cloud storage. I opened my journal, the same one that held every quiet realization from the last few weeks, and wrote, "They're not just trying to erase me anymore. They're coming for anyone who remembered I was ever there." That night, I went to bed early. Not because I was tired, but because I was starting to understand how far they'd go. And the only thing worse than being cut out was watching them poison anyone who'd stood beside you. The morning air was crisp, and for once, the silence in Helena's kitchen felt gentle. I was halfway through a lukewarm cup of coffee when I heard the soft shuffle of paper against wood. At first, I thought it was junk mail someone had slid under the door, maybe a flyer or one of those ads for carpet cleaning. But when I walked over and picked it up, I saw the envelope was plain. Handwritten, no stamp. Inside was a folded piece of lined notebook paper. Slanted handwriting, careful. A smell like old books and garden soil still clung to it. It read, "Mail, I saw you every morning for years, carrying groceries, scraping ice off the driveway when nobody else would, fixing the gate latch, shoveling snow, making runs to the hardware store. I never said anything, didn't want to seem like I was sticking my nose in, but I always knew it was you who kept that house warm. Not the furnace. You, Martin Coyle." I just stood there, holding it. The weight of it wasn't in the paper. It was in the fact that someone outside the family had noticed what the people inside had chosen to ignore. A witness I never knew I had. Quiet, watchful, and honest. Sometimes the most important testimony doesn't come from the people at the table. It comes from the ones watching from the porch. I slid the letter into a plastic sleeve and filed it in the truth file, under a new label, Character Witness. It should have been enough, but life had other plans. Later that afternoon, I was digging through old emails to prep another timeline for Marisol when I stumbled across something I hadn't seen in over a year. A forwarded message from Mom. Subject line, backup copy of the will. Save this, please. I clicked. The PDF opened slowly. My hands were already shaking before I finished the first page. 14 months before she passed, Mom had sent me her original will, clearly naming me as a co-beneficiary to the house, as well as to 2 modest savings accounts. Geneva wasn't left out, but we were supposed to share it. Equally, fairly. It even included a clause. Male will retain equity and residence rights if contributing financially to upkeep, which I had. I whispered, she knew, she tried. But somewhere between the funeral and the lawyer's office, that document had vanished. The version I was shown afterward had only Geneva's name. No mention of me, no clause, nothing. I had trusted them to handle Mom's estate with integrity. I should have known better. I printed the email and attached document, then forwarded it to Marisol with a subject line that said exactly what it was. Probate override, original will discovered. I included every supporting piece I'd gathered over the weeks. The renovation invoices, the forged signature, the mortgage transfer, the video of Darvin admitting I paid for everything. Her reply came 20 minutes later. This changes the structure. Let's talk ASAP. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting. I wasn't defending. I had leverage, I had paper, I had proof. And I had my mother's voice, speaking from a forgotten folder, trying to do in death what she hadn't found the strength to do in life. I sat down and replayed the doorbell footage again, not because I needed more evidence, but because I needed to remind myself of what they thought they could get away with, of how much they relied on me staying silent. I opened my journal and wrote, "The truth doesn't need to yell. It just needs to survive long enough to be found." The morning after I forwarded Mom's will to Marisol, I felt something shift, subtle but real. Like the floor had tilted slightly in my favor. I brewed coffee, fed Helena's cat, and sat down with my laptop thinking maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new. Then my phone buzzed. A distant cousin had tagged me in a photo. I hesitated before tapping the notification. I knew that name. Knew she only ever posted about potlucks and vacation cabins and filtered selfies from church events she never stayed for. I clicked anyway. The photo was from 2 days earlier, New Year's brunch, hosted at Geneva's house. I scanned the picture slowly. Darvin at the head of the table. Geneva pouring orange juice. Lonnie sitting next to a cousin I didn't even recognize anymore. And then, there it was. Second seat from the end. Empty. The caption read, "Wish the whole family could have been here. Some people just drift away, I guess." Beneath it, a comment caught my eye. "She ran off with some guy, right? Sad." And right beneath that? Geneva had liked it. She didn't reply. Didn't correct. Just let the narrative float there, fully intact. I stared at the screen in silence, my fingers curling slightly around the phone. They made space for my absence, I thought, then rewrote the reason why. That hurt in a way the paperwork never had. This wasn't about mortgages or equity or court filings. This was personal. I opened the truth file and created a new section, Visual Erasure. I added the photo, screenshots of the caption, timestamps, comments. Every little detail that said, "She's not here," and we prefer it that way. Then I paused, remembering every family photo I was told to take for us, every moment I was asked to be behind the camera instead of in it. I used to laugh it off. It's fine, I used to say. I hate how I look in pictures anyway. But now I saw the pattern. They were never forgetting me by accident. They were practicing. Helena walked in mid-moment, holding a slice of toast. Something happen? She asked, already knowing the answer. They're hosting brunches, I said, and pretending I ran off with some guy. She blinked. Wait, is that what they're telling people now? I turned the screen toward her. She read the caption, the comment, the like. Then she said something I didn't expect, but needed. They're not deleting you. They're building an alibi in case you return with the truth. That landed harder than I thought it would. I nodded slowly. Let them keep the table, I said. I'm setting my own. I didn't respond to the post. I didn't drop a truth bomb in the comments. I just recorded it, saved it, documented every pixel of their curated reality. After lunch, I sent a short email to Marisol. Subject: defamation thread, potential leverage. I attached the photo and social comments and wrote a single line. Ongoing digital misrepresentation, possibly tied to current real estate negotiations. I hit send, and then I opened my journal. I wrote, they can lie as loud as they want. The truth has better timing. That night, I didn't feel wounded. I felt prepared. They wrote me out of the photo, but the frame? That was still mine. The morning of January 6th felt too quiet to trust. I didn't speak much while dressing, just pulled on a gray sweater, slacks, no jewelry. I wasn't going to a courtroom. I was going to a community event. But I packed the folder anyway. Truth file, all of it. Tabs labeled and color-coded. Legal documents, screenshots, signatures, emails, a copy of the original will. Everything I had carried alone was now condensed into paper, tucked into a black zip-up portfolio that used to hold my resume. Helena had found the flyer 2 days earlier. Local Housing Coalition panel. Neighborhood Restoration and Legacy. Darwin was listed as a featured guest, invited to speak on multi-generational wealth preservation. The irony nearly cracked me in half. I didn't RSVP. I didn't call ahead. I didn't dress in anything designed to make a statement. I showed up. The panel was held at the Flagstaff Community Center. Old building, fluorescent lights, plastic chairs, a small audience, maybe 30 people, most of them older, like me. Some I even recognized from town hall meetings and volunteer drives. Darwin was standing off to the side, flipping through note cards with a familiarity that made my skin itch. He greeted a man beside him with a firm handshake and that too loud laugh he always used in public. I found a seat near the back. I wasn't here to interrupt. I wasn't here to argue. I was here to let the truth walk in through the front door for once. About 20 minutes in, Darwin stepped up to the mic, spoke about his late wife, about the home they built, about family values. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe deeply. I just sat, my hand on the zipper of the file, steady as the moment asked. And then, right as he began to quote something about legacy being built with trust, a man in a black sport coat walked quietly down the center aisle. A legal courier, professionally composed, holding a thick envelope. He approached the front and handed it directly to Darwin. Silence swept the room like a slow wave. Darwin looked at the envelope, then at the audience. He tried to smile, clearing his throat. "Excuse me, folks. One moment." He stepped off the platform and moved toward the hallway, the envelope held like it might catch fire. I didn't follow. I didn't speak. I waited. Later, I handed a separate printed document to one of the event organizers, a woman I had worked beside once at a housing drive. She opened it, skimmed the contents. "For transparency," I said simply. She nodded, no surprise in her eyes. "We heard things," she said quietly. "This confirms them." I nodded back and left it at that. The subpoena detailed it all. Forged quitclaim deed, attempted fraudulent transfer of property, civil complaint of coercion tied to family financial abuse, signed by Marisol Vega. Titled, Restitution for Male Barajas. I walked outside, the cold biting at the edge of my sleeves. Helena met me on the sidewalk with a hot tea and a question in her eyes she didn't voice. "You okay?" she asked anyway. I took a sip. The cup was warm against my palm. "I'm not shaking," I said. "That's new?" That night, I opened the truth file one last time for the day and created the final tab. Served, January 6th. I didn't write anything in my journal. Didn't need to. The paper had spoken. And unlike the people who claimed to love me, it didn't change its story. The morning after the subpoena, I expected to feel shaky. But I didn't. I woke to Helena humming in the kitchen and the faint crackle of eggs hitting a pan. No phones buzzing. No courtroom drama. Just the kind of normal that feels earned, not borrowed. The sun broke through the window, slicing clean lines across the floor. I wrapped myself in a robe and walked barefoot to the kitchen, my body carrying none of the heaviness it had for weeks. Maybe not light, but finally not dragging. Helena glanced up and handed me a mug without a word. The side read, "Don't mistake peace for surrender." I smirked. "You picked these on purpose now?" She shrugged. "Maybe." We didn't mention Darwin, or Geneva, or what happened in that meeting hall. She didn't say, "You did the right thing." I didn't need her to. Instead, we made breakfast. I buttered toast while she scrambled eggs. And it felt ordinary. And then I realized how long it had been since I'd felt anything close to ordinary. After we ate, I sat at the small table in the living room and opened my laptop one last time. The truth file opened easily. Every folder, every email, photo, signature, message, sat waiting. Tidy. Accounted for. Labeled like memories I'd finally named. I moved the entire archive into a secure drive and renamed it. Not for vengeance, just memory. No anger, no bitterness, just closure. Then I opened the journal that had followed me through this entire unraveling. I flipped past pages filled with shaky lines and late-night clarity. On the very last page, I wrote, "I didn't win. I walked away still standing. And that's enough." And I closed it. Helena came over quietly and asked, "You want to go out for a walk?" I nodded. "Just give me 5 minutes." She stepped out onto the balcony, leaving the door open. I slipped on boots, a coat, and before I joined her, I paused at the mirror. Not to check my reflection, but to look at the woman who'd survived all of it, the one no one could crop out of the picture anymore. I stepped outside. The cold hit first, sharp, but not cruel. Not like that hallway the night I left. This chill carried something honest. The wind brushed my cheek as I joined Helena, both of us standing at the rail. "I didn't go back," I said softly. "You didn't need to," she replied. "I didn't call them." "You didn't owe them that either," I nodded. We stood there in silence as the town below us moved on with its day, cars starting, dogs barking, mailboxes opening and shutting. The kind of movement that keeps going whether you're part of it or not. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't missing anything anymore. I wasn't waiting for the apology, or the explanation, or the version of the story where they realize they were wrong. Some endings don't explode. They just close behind you, soft and final. That afternoon, I baked for the first time in months. Banana bread. Nothing fancy. But it made the house smell like something was beginning. Helena came home and said, "Smells like peace." And it did. Later that evening, I sat alone with a glass of tea, no music, no distractions. And I whispered, mostly to myself, "It's my name, my story, and I get to live it now, unedited,